I'm Bob Zimmer, Member of Parliament, here with Jason Assonitis. Hopefully I said that right, Jason.
Yeah, it works. Yeah.
We're just out at Vancouver Harbor. It's a bit overcast. We got some rain, but we're talking to Jason about the public fishery today. And just asking questions about how did you get started into public fishing?
Yeah, well, I started, it all started back when I was, 5 years old, and I spent every waking weekend I possibly could fishing with my grandfather in the Gulf Islands, Souk, and we
Awesome.
salmon fished every single weekend, and I did that till he was in his mid 80s, and he passed away. But the memories that I had and the experiences that I had with him growing up were just, it basically sculpted me as a person.
Yeah.
And so I went to school, studied resource management in university and at BCIT, but I had a drive to be on the water.
Awesome.
And had a drive to go fishing. I just like to go fishing. And it's not just about catching fish. It's a whole picture.
Right.
From catching them to seeing where they spawn. I mean, when I'm not on the water in the summer and the fall, I'll go walk the creeks and just like stare at spawning salmon and just,
Wow.
it's a miracle of nature, and
Yeah.
it's something that it's not just killing fish. It's the whole respect about the whole environment and also the family dynamic as well. Because I have with our family, we spend so much time on the water, and it's one thing that drives us together. And it's not about killing as many fish as possible.
Yeah.
It's nice to retain one for a barbecue or
Sure.
a family gathering, but it's just fishing brings people together, and it also brings people together in conservation as well, because it's something that we want to see continue for generations and generations. And
Well, maybe that's what I'll ask you next, Jason, because I think what a lot of viewers don't know is that some of the most avid environmental stewards are fishers themselves, right? So in conservation, you referred to that, you're actually in the creek beds, because that's where the fish come from, that's where it all starts. So maybe just speak about some of your efforts and what you do when you're not out and about catching fish.
Yeah, totally. So a big thing that we've been a part of for the last kind of 8 years is it's a program called the Avid Anglers, and it's a group of anglers that are fishing guides, retired people, just everyday people in citizen science, and we go out and we sample our catch. We get DNA on Chinook salmon, at times cove, but mainly Chinook salmon. So over the last kind of, I guess since 2013, the group has collected over 50,000 Chinook samples.
Wow.
In the Salish Sea. So there's the old saying, like, you want to know what you eat. We also want to know what we catch.
Right.
So we have a very good understanding, being in this program, of which Chinook stocks are where and when. I mean, there's some of us that can look at a Chinook salmon and say, well, you know what, that fish is probably going to the Thompson River, that fish is going to the Capilano River, just because we spend so much time around them and studying and analyze them.
Right.
That's how closely we're tied in to it. So it's really important for us. We do not want to kill the last fish. We want things to be sustainable, have a future, and that's, especially in the last couple of years, with some of the decisions that have come down from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and specifically, in my opinion, the political movement within the management of fisheries. It's been so frustrating because we just don't know where to go.
Right. Well, and this brings us to the discussion or the misunderstanding about, are there fish still out there? So we've seen by the data that there are fish out there. We've talked to Fred about this, Fred Helmer, just previous, about how many hatchery fish are getting put into the system from Washington State and in Canada, over 110 million annually. But maybe speak to that. Are there fish to catch in the water, Jason? Oh yeah,
the last few years in particular, if you were to ask a guy or a girl who fished in the 90s, people generally, they would say that there are more Chinook around now than there were 15 or 20 years ago.
Wow.
Some stocks, are not doing well, and it is in no one's best interest to see them decline,
Right.
and we want to protect them.
Right.
But to give you a few examples, there's some hatchery runs on the east coast of the island, the Puntledge River, the Qualicum River, the Campbell River, and these fish are showing up in big numbers in a lot of our samples. And if you check the DFO stats on the returns, they are having some of the highest runs that they've had in 15 or 20 years. So the struggle is in mixed stock fisheries, we don't want to be targeting abundant stocks and having an impact on these stocks that are having trouble. This is why we try and have these data-driven proposals to move forward, so we can target these abundant hatchery stocks and non-stocks of concern, but also give the protection needed for the stocks of concern. So,
well, I think we talked about that, and again, the viewer might not know about selective fishing. And that you can fish for the fish that there's a lot of out there, and if there's fish that are threatened and a species that's struggling, then those fish remain, and they're left there to repopulate the rivers. So that's just something that I think, in closing the whole fishery, that becomes, DFO even has the numbers provided to them. There are certain numbers that are doing well and ones that are struggling, but yet they decided to close the whole fishery, and that's the concern. And we talked about it, just even your somewhat small enterprise is still a $1 million enterprise. And how many people are involved in your business?
Well, we probably
how many people do you provide for, or provide maybe direct and indirect are affected by just your business?
Yeah, exactly. Like we have in peak season about 5 to 6 full-time employees, but the support that our business provides to not only our local economy, but also to the islands. Like you get the cottages, the seaplanes, the pubs, the restaurants, all these kind of enterprises that make up a community. I mean, right now it's March 6th, and the whole south coast of British Columbia, Campbell River, Souk, Powell River, Nanaimo, nobody knows what's going to happen on April 1st. We know there's some excellent proposals put forward by the Sport Fishing and Advisory Board. But just based on the track record of these ministerial decisions, we have no faith that they're going to act in the best interest of data. So
and we saw that last year, where the SFAB actually provided the numbers to have a fishery that could open, and they still were told no, it's still going to remain closed.
Totally.
So where do we go from here, Jason? I think that's where we're at now, because we talk about the interim. And businesses like you're looking to survive the next year, which is what we're trying to help with this. But what about the long term? What do we need to do to really fix the fishery in BC?
Well, I think what we really need, especially for these stocks of concern, is we need a real recovery plan. In my opinion, a lot of these closures, I mean, they're optical to a certain degree. There is. We should be closing areas that have an impact on these stocks of concern.
Well, as you said, and you said too, who's going to be the most affected by no salmon would be Jason in a business like this. They have anybody want fish to remain and flourish. Right?
Totally.
So
I think we just need a real recovery plan with some teeth and some funding. And it's just, I think the whole West Coast is getting frustrated by these generic answers that are provided by our politicians. And we need some a real recovery plan to help these early time Fraser fish. And we need a plan that, like if these fish come back, I mean, it'll provide a sustainable future for all user groups. But in the meantime, as we help these stocks recover by looking at the data to avoid them, these responsible proposals will create a lifeline to BC to the BC coastal communities and all these user groups that rely on salmon and need them. And everybody does not want to see the last salmon caught. Everybody that are fighting for these fish and access are fighting for the salmon as well. And we need the government to do a better job to balance everything, because there sure seems to be top end loaded with a lot of politics, and we just need a recovery plan and some money invested into recovering, specifically the early Fraser stocks of concern.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Jason, for having us out on your boat. I don't think we're going to have time to fish today.
No.
It's a little wet out here, but I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us. And thank you for watching today too, and just stay tuned for more on the public fishery. Thanks for watching. Like so many British Columbians, some of my favorite memories are fishing with my family. If you believe the minister needs to start listening to the concerns of our BC fishing families and communities, I encourage you to call her at her office at 902-527-5655 or send an email to bernadette.jordan@parle.gc.ca. We must ensure that our children and our grandchildren have the opportunity to enjoy the great outdoors and participate in an angling tradition that has been a proud way of life for generations.